All right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the Troy Interfaith Group's March meeting. We know that time is precious these days. We've come to understand just how valuable our time is and how valuable other people's time is. And so we are so grateful that you have chosen to spend an evening with us talking about what it means to be a leader in a faith community and all that goes into it. So thank you so much for joining us. Just a few announcements before we jump into our panel discussion today. Like you saw the our advertisement, our flyer for our April meeting, that is going to be on April 4th. Cat transition, sorry about that. April 4th at 7 o'clock, our usual meeting time. Next month, we will be having a DIA gallery educator named Christian Black, who will be presenting a curated collection of highlighted artists whose works represent many, many different faith traditions. So it's not going to be just a Christian art discussion, but a carefully selected curation of many traditions and the intersecting nature of that art as housed in the DIA. And so that is going to be a wonderful discussion after perusing the different pieces of artwork and hearing about the history. There will be a discussion afterwards about those art pieces and what they mean and what they inspire in us. So stay tuned for that. We will be posting the links. Once again, it will be on Zoom, but we are hoping soon to have some in-person meetings. So stay tuned. If you want more information, you can always sign up for our mailing list at our Troy Interfaith Group webpage. There is a sign up link for our newsletter for all the needs. With that, we do want to have one special welcome because we are joined briefly by a new leader in one of our worshiping communities. So I want to give a special welcome to Rev Dr. Tara Sutton from Big Beaver United Methodist Church. Hello. We are so excited that you are joining us. As I understand, you can't stay long tonight, but I did want to say a hello and a welcome. Would you like a quick word to say hello? Oh, check your audio.
Hi, everybody. I am grateful to be here at Big Beaver United Methodist Church. I just got 2 meetings going on simultaneously, and so I can't stay long, but I wanted just to drop by and say hello.
All right. Well, it is a joy to have you joining our community, and we hope to see you in the future.
Thank you.
So with that, the one last thing that I do want to take a moment for is acknowledging some of the difficult events in the world today in this time and place there. So I invite you all to take a moment of silence for the strife that is in Ukraine right now, for the people that are suffering and the people who are fighting for their rights and their freedoms. Whatever your tradition prescribes, I invite you into a time of prayer or meditation, or to hold this moment as holy as we are silent together in honor of those people. Thank you all. So with that, let us begin our panel discussion tonight. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce to you 5 wonderful religious leaders. Some of them may be familiar faces, some are, this is their first time to a TIG event, and so I ask you to welcome them all. We are joined tonight by Reverend Ginger Luke from Beacon Unitarian Universalist Church, and Rabbi Alicia Harris from Congregation Shir Tikva, Imam Nasir from the Ahmadiyya Community Center, the Venerable Hoden Sunim from the Dharma Gate Zen Center, and Rev Dr. Bob Cornwall, currently pastor at large in the Troy area. So Ken, with your applause or with hands, I ask you to welcome our panelists for this evening. They will momentarily give their own introduction so you can learn a little bit about their traditions and how long they've been in it. As we jump into this, I do invite you to find the chat feature, because while I have a lot of questions, we are in some ways more interested in the questions you all have. So if you want to ask a panelist a question, or you want to ask the group a question, feel free to type your question into the chat, and I will make sure that it gets addressed. And with that, let us begin. So first and foremost, I'm going to invite Reverend Ginger. Tell us a little bit about the Unitarian Universalist. How long have you been at Beacon specifically, and how long have you been a part of this tradition, this religious tradition?
I'm an interim minister at Beacon, which means that I came in August, and I'll be here for 2 years to help them in transition as they prepare to call a full-time minister. And I came out of retirement. I chuckled when someone was talking about retirement, because I came out of retirement to do this. A little surprise, I got an email from the Retired Ministers and Partners group that I was with, and they were looking for people to assist in interim programs. And I have 2 grandchildren in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so I actually, my home is in Bethesda, Maryland. But I thought this would be a great chance. And as it is, I get to leave on the Sunday afternoon and have dinner with my grandchildren in Ann Arbor and stay overnight and come back on Monday morning. And it was only raining, not snowing this morning when I drove back. But I was a religious educator earlier, before I went through seminary and was ordained. So I've been really involved with the Unitarian Universalist for 44 years. Before that, as a child, I was the daughter of a Presbyterian choir director. And so I always just felt like church was home. And then when I was in junior high and high school, the small Episcopal church in the little town in Nebraska where I lived asked me if I would be their organist. So I have those plain songs in the back of my head, and they come out every once in a while. So I've had this long sense of being at home in a religious institution.
Well, thank you. I'm going to, if anyone has questions on language, because I know religious communities have a lot of terms and they may not be shared across denomination or across tradition, feel free to put those in the chat. Just for clarification, for those who might not know, what is an interim?
Oh, an interim is a temporary minister that comes in to help a congregation move from where they have been before to where they want to be. And in this case, they had a 3/4 time minister who was called to another congregation. And so they were in a place of wanting a new minister. And in our tradition, as in actually in many, there's a value in allowing the congregation to be in transition for a little while, so that you can really evaluate who you are now and what you would like to be. And also it helps the new permanent minister coming in not always hear the words, well, so-and-so did it this way when she or he was here. So it's a transition to help everyone be happier with their final decisions. And in our congregation, in our tradition, the congregation actually votes on the minister. So there's they call their minister, and so we want them to be happy with who they are at the end, and we hope that I and they don't fall too much in love with each other in the process.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to jump over to Rabbi Alicia. Tell us, as I understand, you're new to your current congregation. how long have you, or tell us a little bit specifically about your religious tradition that you have chosen, and how did you end up here?
So thank you. First of all, thank you for having me as a part of this. TIG is such an important piece of what we do in Troy, and I feel really grateful to be amongst this group of colleagues. So thank you for having me. I started at Congregation Shir Tikva in July of 2020. I was ordained in May of 2020. So you know, it has not been the usual beginning to the start of a career, but I was ordained by Hebrew Union College, which is the Reform Jewish seminary in Cincinnati. It's you know, it has a long tradition of ordaining progressive folks, and so I was there for 6 years before this. I grew up in a Reform synagogue in a Jewish house with Jewish parents who happen to be on this call at this moment. So if you're looking for them, they're here. I sort of always knew that I was going to go into this job. I sort of took a little bit of a winding path to get here and took a detour in politics a little bit, but I found my way back, certainly. So it's being in Michigan has been wonderful. You know, I'm young, and I am very grateful for this to be my first congregation. It's such a wonderful community, so that I'm grateful to be here.
All right, thank you so much. So now, Imam Nasir, we're turning to you. So tell us a little bit about you and your religious tradition, and how long have you been at Ahmadiyya Community Center?
First of all, I want to say my greeting of peace to all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, which means that peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon all of you. So this is our greetings, and whenever we meet each and every person, we say this thing. So this is number one. Number two is I want to thank all of you for organizing this very important meeting so that we can introduce ourselves. Many, even the religious leader, don't know the tradition, faith, and history of other groups. So therefore, I want to mention that my name is Imam Shamshad Nasir, and I am born in Ahmadiyya Muslim community. My grandfather accepted this community, Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and then my parents and I am also born Ahmadi Muslims. As far as my service are concerned, by the grace of God, I am a missionary, I am Imam, I am Rabbi, I am Muballigh, which is serving the community for the past 50 years. So next year will be in month of May, completing 50 years of my service to my faith, my religion. I dedicated my life after my 10th grade of school, high school in Pakistan. I went 7 years for comparative study of the religion, where I read the Quran, Hadith, Bible, and other faiths. And after 7 years, in 1973, I graduated from there. And then I was posted in Pakistan for a couple of years. Then I was sent to West Africa for 8 years. And for the past 35 years, I'm working in the United States and serving my community. When I say I'm a murabbi, it means I take care of the moral and spiritual values and training of our members. When I say I am muballigh, it means I am conveying the message of Islam and message of God, message of peace, tolerance, love, respect to other faith and to everyone in the world. And when I say I am Imam, it means leader who lead in prayers and service. So I thought, because I have mentioned these some of the Islamic terminology, and maybe people may not know. So this is what it is. When I went in my comparative study of the religion for 7 years, then they gave this title, 3 titles, which I just mentioned: Murabbi, Muballigh, and Imam. So by the grace of our God, as I mentioned, that I served my community for the past 50 years. And our goal is that we want to show our love to each and every person and hatred to none. And we want to respect each and every religious leader also and their congregation. We may differ with many things, but with respectfully. And if there's a religion does not teach respect, then we don't consider that that is a religion. All religion who comes from God, they have to respect to each other. And that is our main purpose, to conveying the message of peace, love, harmony, understanding, and building the bridge between the communities. So this is the answer of your first question. I hope there'll be another question also, then I will go accordingly.
All right, thank you so much. So now we turn to the Venerable Hoden Sunim. Tell us a little bit about you and your tradition. How long have you been at the Dharma Gate Zen Center, and how long have you been a part of this tradition?
Yeah, and thank you all for having me. It's my first time with this organization, really. And just to echo, I think it's really wonderful that communities of faith come together. We really need it. And Troy is such a diverse area too. It's really great to see everybody here. So I was not born into this tradition. I am a Buddhist monk from a Zen tradition. There's a lot of different traditions within Buddhism, but I was ordained through a Zen tradition, a Zen lineage. I've been involved within Buddhism for about a little over 30 years. I ordained 12 years ago after going through a seminary program here in the West. A lot of retreats working with a teacher, and at the end of the seminary program, we were sent to a monastery in South Korea. So I spent time at Seonnamsa Monastery. It's about a 1,500-year-old monastery training monastery in the mountains, Joge Mountains. And after that, I ordained as a Sami monk, which is kind of a junior monk, and then went back for full bhikkhu ordination. So that was about 6 years ago. So I've been a monk for about 12 years. We started Dharma Gate Zen. I was actually the founder of Dharma Gate Zen about, believe it or not, 8 years ago. It's shocking to me. Time really flies, but community has grown very, very quickly. We started in a very small space and then moved about 4 years ago to kind of double our capacity. So, we have a pretty broad Sangha. We support all local communities. We have people from Royal Oak, all from Troy, from all surrounding areas, people that, kind of come in each day. We run a bunch of programs there. So, we have a draw from a lot of different backgrounds.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Lastly, for our last of the introductions, I invite Reverend Dr. Bob Cornwall. As I understand, you are another person who has maybe been in quite a few different traditions. So tell us how long you've been part of your current tradition and what you see your role is now.
So I guess I'll start with that I'm been ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, which is a mainline Protestant denomination. Christianity has multiple branches: Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, and others. I think there's 134,000 different traditions, something like that. But anyway, I'm ordained. I've been ordained for 37 years. 37 years in the Disciples. I retired from Central Woodward Christian Church at the end of June of 2021. Currently, I am a temporary pulpit supply at First Presbyterian Church here in Troy. I've been there since October, and I'll be there till the end of May. But I was born and raised in the Episcopal Church, and later on became part of the Foursquare Church, which is a Pentecostal denomination. And then I went on to seminary at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, California, not knowing what denomination I was going to be at that point. Didn't even know if I was going to be ordained at the time, because I started in a Master of Arts program, which was an academic program, and only later decided while I was there to pursue what's called a Master of Divinity degree, which is the basic degree required for most mainline Protestant denominations, Presbyterian Disciples, United Church of Christ, United Methodists, and others. So I eventually was ordained after I finished my my seminary career in 1985 as my MDiv, still thinking that I was going to be an academic and not a pastor. So I became a pastor of a congregation as my permanent position in 1998, and then served 3 churches. In the last 13 years, before my retirement, I was at Central Woodward after coming from Southern California. So I think I covered everything, but I'm sure that there's some other questions that will emerge over time. But right now, I've called myself minister at large, which means I go and do wherever I'm supposed to go.
So that actually leads perfectly into our first meaty question. So thank you, Bob, for that. And thank you, everyone, for being here. So the first really meaty question. I reflect of my own time in school, and one of my professors made a comment that if you are outlining the book of John, that is a warning sign that you need to go to seminary. And so my friends and I started joking about the seminary warning signs. What were the warning signs? What was the moment where you knew you were going to be a pastor? And so knowing that each of our traditions is different, do you all have a moment that you remember, or like the warning sign, when did you decide that this is the career that you wanted to do? So I'm going to first turn to Rabbi Alicia. You hinted that you recently graduated, but you were doing something else beforehand. So what was the moment that you're like, I need to make a career change? What did that look like for you?
So, when you all have stories of multiple years. I have less stories like that, but when I was 12 years old, I was studying for my bat mitzvah. And I have like some very specific memories of asking for more material to learn, and feeling like I could understand it and it made sense to me right away. So I sort of leaned into that. And then in college, I got really involved in political life, and I worked at City Hall for a long time and interned with this amazing city council person. And I loved that work, but I was answering phones for him. I was like, it was my junior year of college, and I was answering phones, and somebody called me for like the 30th time that day, like, there's a pothole on my street. And I was like, oh no, like I certainly know who to call for this problem, but it doesn't feel right. Like something felt off to me. So after I graduated from undergrad, I spent 2 years as the executive assistant to a senior rabbi in Pittsburgh, which is where my parents are. And that's not like a set of skills that I possess naturally, perhaps, a set of skills that he sort of took me on and was like, listen, like, as you're here and as you're learning all this stuff, like, you can see if this is the right job for you. So I spent 2 full years basically following him around and watching funerals and life cycle events and understanding why he did the things he did, and watching the way that he signed letters, like everything that I could learn from him. And in my second year of doing that, I had a friend say to me, like, hey, probably time to think about applying to school. And I was like, oh yeah, like, you're right. So I sort of turned it around at that moment. I giggled at the warning sign, Pastor Chris, because like, as I was sitting in seminary the last 6 years of my life, like before I started this job, like there are always moments where you're just like, if somebody else saw what we were doing right now, they would be like, what? Like, there's just some crazy things that happen that you're just, you feel very like, oh, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And then moments where you feel like, what have I done? So I think that's really the moment. I mean, I've always known that this is what I was going to do. It just sort of took me a few detours to get here. And the warning signs were like, do you talk about Judaism all the time? Are you always thinking about it? Are you thinking about how you could improve a situation? Like, what are who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you only hanging out with other rabbis? Like those kinds of things. So those were the things that sort of tipped me off. And also some people in my life were like, hey, time for you to go. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So.
Thank you. So I'm also Venerable Hoden. I'm also thinking of your transition from someone attending retreats to then ordaining as a monk. What was that transition like, and what made you take the leap from one to the next?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's funny. I think when I hear warning sign, my warning sign wasn't about wanting to become a monk. That was never really my intent or my direction. I think my warning sign was the warning sign of the life that I was leading, and suffering and being unhappy and kind of getting involved in consumerism and not being, very satisfied with the path that I was on. So, the warning sign for me was that something had to change. And then I had an opportunity. I was in Japan at a certain point in a monastery and just as a tourist, but really felt a sense of peace. I saw a monk there raking leaves in a garden, kind of had that moment of like, I would rather be him than me right now. So, that was kind of the beginning to get me, off the track that I was on and getting a lot more serious about just, meditation and diving into practice and learning more. Along the way, it had a really great effect on my life. It started to really change my life. And so I started to kind of look back and say, if I want to live a life of compassion, a life of peace, then maybe it's time to serve others. So kind of the next natural step. Again, I had teachers and I had people around me too. I'll bet all of us will have a story of that. Somebody was around us kind of pushing us in a direction that maybe we never thought we would be in. But, I started very cautiously down a path of just wanting to help people, not necessarily being a monk. And, multiple years later, the more I dove in, the more it felt like a fit, in that trajectory that I was on to kind of keep going in that direction. And I guess the rest is history. Here I am, 20 years later in a completely different place.
Oh. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. So, Imam Shamshad Nasir, I think of the introductions in your stories, you were one of the youngest in the beginning. I mean, Rabbi Alicia, you mentioned like having this inclination at 12, but Imam Shamshad, you were also very young when you started your education. So what made you decide to take that education path at such a young age? Was there something in particular that you saw in this job trajectory, or was it just one step after another?
Thank you again. As I mentioned, my early age, my mother is the one who was a role model for me and who brought me up, and my father also helped in that regard. I was 3-4 years old when my mother told me, you can see 3-4 years age, what is that age? But my mother told me that time that you will have to dedicate your life for the service of Islam. So I said that, what is that? Because I didn't know. Because when we migrated from India to Pakistan, 1947, my grandfather and my parents, they came in a small village. When migration is going on, you can see the Ukrainian people, they are leaving everything behind and going other places. The same situation was with the Indo-Pak subcontinent when 1947, they divided into 2 parts. So we left everything in India. We did not have anything. So we came, my grandfather bought a small land somewhere. There we settled, and there was no person around us as an Ahmadi Muslim according to our faith. So my grandfather built small mosque of mud and clay only, my grandfather. And there was no, as I said, there was no members around us who belonged to our faith. Although there was some Muslim, but they were settled, they were their own mosque, they were going to town. But we are quite different in Islam also with other faith. When you will ask the question about faith, beliefs, then I will mention later on that one. But here, when my grandfather made that little mosque, where only 5 to 7 people could say their prayers. So that time my mother told me that you are going to dedicate your life, and she taught me that what does it mean. When I asked the question, she told me that you will go to school, you will get education. When you are graduated from the school, then we will hand over to you to the community, and whatever they will tell you, you have to do that one. So that was the small definition of my dedication to my faith, to my service. So then my father, when I graduated from high school, then I went to that 7 years comparative study of the religion, and 1973, I passed that one, cleared by the grace of God. I was graduated, and then I was posted. So my mother and my father both, they helped me to understand what is that. They both assisted me in all my affairs and matters. You know, in America, mostly who are in panelists, they are American, or they were in these countries. There are many, what you call it, people are there to help and serve education. I am talking about my country. There is nothing to help and assist that time. So I'm thankful to my parents that they took that care of me and brought me to the right path, and taught me the prayer, taught me the supplication, how to worship to God, because we are nothing if God's mercy, his blessings are not with us. And she taught me right from the beginning that whenever you are in trouble, whenever you are in need of help, whenever, instead of going to here and there, just beg before God. So that is my faith that I started, that I developed. I think all faith and religion are trying to convey this message to others, but this is my mother started with me, and my father helped me. Then my whole family helped me in this regard. And I thank God today that I'm a right place, right, conveying the message of God, peace, love, and harmony, understanding to each and every person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. It really is amazing how much our families, for some of us, really come in, and like without them, we wouldn't get far. And that support network. So it's wonderful to hear how your family really helped you along your journey. The other one, Reverend Ginger, you mentioned that your mother was a part of the Presbyterian Church, which is my personal tradition. And so I am a little bit biased here, but I'm curious with you, like being coming from kind of that family tradition, where did the switch flip and you're like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my time, my energy, my career to this? Did you have any of the pastor warning signs, or what was that like?
Well, I guess in some ways, when I was always connected with the church. Even when I was an undergraduate, I was connected with the church. But when I was a sophomore in college, I went on a ship that traveled around the world as a student ship. And so I got to stop in all these different places in the world and see different religions in some of their more original sites, and that really moved me a great deal to be exploring that. So when I came back, I transferred to a school for a program in international studies, and about the same time, I have some affinity with Alicia. I was the youngest delegate to the Democratic Convention, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in 1968. And one of the people on that delegation, the sergeant at arms of the Nebraska delegation where I was an English professor that I met. and married a couple of years later. And he was a Unitarian, and I, I remember saying to him, well, what do Unitarians do at Christmas time? and he said, we celebrate. But he introduced me to poetry, and I began reading more and more about Unitarian Universalism, and it felt good. It felt really good. And so I got very involved in all of that. And then when we had a child, I started, well, actually before we had children, I started working with the religious education program because it just felt like a place I wanted to be. And then I took on a part-time job as a religious educator when she was in preschool. And at one point thought, is this what you want your daughter to do when she grows up? And I said, no, I don't think this is what I want my daughter to do. And so I said to myself, you need to do this. You need to make it what you would be proud of your daughter doing, or do something else. And so I got very involved then in getting much more training in what I was doing, and involved in starting a campus ministry and things like that. Then my husband died, and I had to decide whether I was going to stay in this track or whether I was going to go someplace else. And it turned out that I took a full-time job as a religious educator as First Universalist in Minneapolis. And when I was there, I realized I wanted to go to the seminary in order to have more training for working with my parents. So it was all partly wanting just to do, it was kind of like wanting to help people more. I wanted to have more resources to help the people that I was working with. So it was out of my focus on religious education that I did that. And then I got invited to, so I was in a UCC seminary in the Twin Cities, but there were these collaborative classes we would have with the Lutheran seminary and the Baptist seminary. And so it was really exciting to have all these professors at the same time. And that really was stimulating too. I then moved to Bethesda, Maryland as the religious educator in a church in Bethesda, Maryland, and continued my work at Wesley Seminary in DC. And it was there that I got to this place where I realized that I had to decide whether I wanted to go on to just continue to be taking classes in a seminary, or whether I wanted them to go into some kind of a degree. And that was a real struggle, because did I want this ministry that I was getting called in to be focused only in religious education, or did I want it to go bigger than that? And finally, I finished my degree at the Medill Lombard in Chicago. And it was almost as if I was getting pulled into it, not just diving in directly, but children brought me there to start with. And maybe my experience with my mother, and maybe just the experience of seeing lots of different religions throughout the world. And then I had this wonderful experience of a clinical pastoral education at NIH, which also the patients were from all over the world with all over religions. And so I could see how valuable it was to be able to work with people out of different religious faiths who were all needing some spiritual support.
Thank you. It seems to be something, or your story, Reverend Ginger, almost seems like one that had this natural growth and progression, where it's like you answered one question and then another one popped up, which took you to another step.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, okay. So next big question. Because we want to fit some other questions in, this is more of a rapid fire round of what is one of the most difficult parts of the job that you do today, or that you have dealt with in the past, knowing that leading communities today is very different than even 2 or 3 years ago. So I'm going to ask you all real quick, what's the hardest part? And the next one will be what's easiest, but we're going to hold on there. So because we started, Dr. Bob Cornwall, we're going to start with you this round. What has been the hardest thing in serving the churches that you have so far?
So I'm going to look back, and I think my colleagues will agree that the past 2 years with COVID have probably been the most challenging of my pastoral career. I've had some difficult times dealing with congregations and such. Got fired once, so you know. But the reality of two things. One is that you're having to shut down and no longer have services in person, and trying to figure out how we're going to do that. We had to learn new skills. I had to learn how to broadcast a service on Facebook Live and have meetings and Bible studies using Zoom, things that we hadn't done before. But the other part goes with that is simply for a good portion of the time, that the early months, we couldn't visit anybody in our congregations, especially our older ones. The nursing homes were closed to us. Hospitals were closed to us. And so I think that that reality has been one of the biggest challenges that I know that I've faced. And of course, that was at the end of my ministry. My permanent full-time ministry was in the midst of that, and it wasn't the way I planned to go out, I guarantee you.
I will say this just because Bob was one of those that welcomed me to the area. I will say when I first started, he had already planned to retire and then the pandemic hit. So it's not like pandemic and then retirement, it was retirement, then pandemic.
Yep.
Imam Shamshad, I'm curious with you, what are some of the difficult parts of being the leader of your community?
The thing is, first of all, I have to understand, or we have to understand, that what is my job. First, we have to define our job. My job, then difficulty comes.
Okay.
My job is the job of the prophets mentioned in the Holy Quran. All prophets, they were bringing people towards God. But they suffer. Look, Jesus, how he suffered and how he was put on the cross because of that. Look, Moses, how he suffered with the hand of the Pharaoh. Look, Prophet Abraham, how he was thrown in the fire. What they were doing. All these people, what they were doing. They were just calling people towards God. So this is my job. And we have to suffer. Those who want to not suffer, they should not choose this job then. It is not easy job at all. Even you do not when I say you, doesn't mean especially you. I'm just referring to each and every person that we do not understand the mentality, standard of education, level of understanding of each and every person, but you have to deal with them. I don't compromise my faith with just talking with, oh, you are doing good. It is very good. It is nice. I don't play like that. It is just false thing that you are talking. Go straight forward to the point. Call towards Allah with love, with understanding, with affection, respect. I am repeating these words again and again. So our job is not easy. Our job is very difficult. That is, it is pandemic, whether it was not pandemic. Before pandemic also was not easy. Did you get my point, what I'm saying? My job is job of prophets, and we have to bring people towards God, which is not easy. You can see the attendance of the church today. You can see the attendance of synagogue today. You can see the attendance, even they are our own people, but they are not coming. They are not coming. So our job is 24 hours. No, in my community, when I dedicate my life, I cannot do any other business. Whatever my community provide for me, I have to be on that. I cannot say, oh, this is less for me. I don't want to stay here because this mosque is not paying too much. And I have this thing, I have, no. I dedicated my life for the service of God, for the service of humanity. Whether they give me little, they give me huge, I should be patient on that and to serve my community and serve my faith and serve my God. So this is a difference with other and our community. Our community, when we say dedicate of life, go and preach, become Imam, become this and that, then there's some rules and regulation which you have to follow. All my life, 70 years, I never look to the money, property of any other person at all. I don't see, oh, this man has so much, would that I could have also the same thing. No, I don't have that thing in my mind and heart, but I trust in God, and God has provided everything for me in my life. There is no single desire of mine which God did not give me, did not honor me to that. I don't see that I have prayed and God did not listen to my prayer. God have listened my all prayers, not one, not two, not 10, not 10,000. Whatever I prayed, I got. I was honored by God. So that's what I want to say that. But one thing is with that in our community, when we serve faith, we don't say I'm the officer. We say Sayyidul Qawme Khadimuhum. The one who is serving the community, he is their servant, not officer. I don't lead my community as an officer. I lead my community as a servant to them. This is my honor for me. And this, our head of the community, Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we have system of Khilafat, Caliph, which provide and guide us for that all the time, that we should be humble. We should be looking to the need of the people. We should be looking to the standard of the people. We should not just talk what we want to talk. No, we have to see everything. Then you talk with them in a wise manner, because that's what Quran says, Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikmate wal mawizatil hasanate, that invite towards God with wisdom and good talk, which affect the heart of the people, touch the heart of people. For instance, I just want to give an example. When God sent Moses, yeah, you want to say something?
It's just, we're running short on time, so
Okay,
I just want to make
okay.
sure that everyone has a chance to answer. That is all.
That's all. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. It is, I love how you explained though the connection between both the passion for your job or for your servant leadership, and like the things that get you passionate about serving God is kind of connected to some of the hard parts, that it's just to acknowledge that it's going to be difficult, but we do it because we're called.
Yes.
So thank you. I am going to turn now to Reverend Hoden, because you mentioned that you helped found the community that you lead. So I'm curious specifically, what are the hard parts, knowing that you're not just a leader, but you're in part the founder of your where you lead?
Yeah, thanks. And it's actually interesting. COVID, this time between COVID had a really interesting effect. I know a lot of people have already said that it made it very difficult. We actually had the opposite effect. I feel like our Sangha grew exponentially during that time. They came together actually a lot more during that time. I think that's just an echo of, people taking a break from, being at home from work, and, like maybe having a pause to, think about their lives a little bit. But we were a little, concerned, like I'm sure everybody was when it started. We had to shut down for a couple months, but we were really surprised at how much it's been growing ever since. But to answer your question, I'd say the hardest part, we're very much a minority. Buddhism is not very old in the West. It is also not very well educated. So you don't read a lot about, Buddhism classes. I've met people who've taken comparative religion classes and still don't really have a very good understanding. It's very new here. We're very much, missionaries, more than we are monks. There's a lot of education of just understanding how complex Buddhism is, how old it is, all the various schools, what's the difference between these things. And in a Western sense, because it's so young and we have so many influences from all over the world, it makes it even harder to understand. So, I'd say a lot of, one of my larger struggles and those of my, my students as well is, that we're really starting from a very base level. Buddhism has been around for 2,600 years. It's very well founded in other countries and has been that way for, thousands of, 2,000 years. And here we're really talking about 40 years, maybe 50 years. So, just getting people to understand what it is, what we practice, what we believe, how we live, what are the resources, what are the differences and so forth. I think that's kind of where we are right now with Buddhism in this country. I broke away from the Korean order that I had been ordained through, really predominantly because of a lot of the cultural differences between the West and, other countries, just not really understanding the Western mindset. And therefore we founded Dharma Gate on this idea of really trying to create something that was approachable and understandable, to kind of set that base, try to plant the seed that would grow over whatever generations or decades or however long it takes, and probably well after I'm gone. But that's been really the hardest part, is we have a lot of people that come in from all over. They've been either misinformed or they have a perception of what they think things are. They've read some things, the Hollywood version of what Buddhism is or what the practice is. And so we have a lot of just trying to sort things out, to get people on this way of living, and to kind of break away from how they've been raised to believe of how they're supposed to be as people in this community. So that's been the hardest part. But it's also in some ways, I would echo, I knew what I was getting into. I knew it was, I didn't think it was ever going to be easy at all. And I never look back and say, oh, poor me, this is so hard. I mean, I've dedicated my entire life to doing this, and I can accept what comes and what challenges are there.
Thank you for that. So Reverend Ginger, you're an interim in your current position, which means you're fundamentally a person of change and transition. And I'm curious, what is hard and what is difficult in that specifically, in your work or in your role as a Unitarian pastor in general, if there's been something that is particularly difficult there. So what's difficult for you?
I think communication is almost always difficult, because I want people to be able to feel like they know what's happening, and that their ideas are valuable, and that especially in the COVID, just being able to communicate. If you had some disabilities where you really were too old, say, to be able to handle your computer, or you have a hearing thing and the phone is not just not an easy way for you. I think the communication and just understanding what a congregation in transition is, because a congregation doesn't really know what an interim ministry is for a congregation, which requires a lot of communication, and it requires encouraging people to examine why they exist as a religious community and how they want to continue doing that. So the communication, I think, is always you always wish you could do it slightly better than is happening, and people's expectations can really cause anxiety if it were not clear about what those expectations are. The positive is that I think pastoral care is always a place where where listening to people and letting people know you are there for them is a place that almost always it feels like it was a useful moment whenever you did it and however you did it.
Yeah. I want to echo the specifically the communication is difficult, and it never, like, we have whole classes of training, or at least I know I did, in like how to listen and how to communicate, and it's never as easy as it seems. And so I appreciate you lifting that up specifically. But acknowledging ability level, especially in like transition in COVID times. So thank you so much. So lastly, Rabbi Alicia, I'm going to give you a slightly different question, if you would bear with me. Knowing that you are kind of fresh out of your training and have been in this community a little while, what has been hard, but also what are the things that are coming to mind that it's like, school did not prepare me for this? Just knowing that of your proximity to your education, what did school not prepare you for that you have faced?
Well, yeah. You know, it's really interesting because most days I just feel so grateful for the education I received. Like I have handled some situations and I knew exactly what to do. I think the answer to your question and maybe your next question is the same. What's the hardest thing and what's the best thing? It's the people, right? It's the same. Like, we are dealing every day with people, and like, what a joy, and also very challenging sometimes, you know, like that to me, like that's the essence of this, is like, you can't predict what other people are going to do. Right. And you have to sort of go with the flow sometimes, and you have to just be present. I think, you know, there have been a few situations that I've felt like, let me say this, the COVID situation, school did not prepare me to be a tech person or like to help troubleshoot everybody's IT in the entire congregation. Like, school did not prepare me for like microphones and all that, like all the stuff that I've had to learn how to do over the last few years. I certainly wasn't prepared for. There have been some specific moments, you know, that I've been like, okay, well, you know, there have been a lot of times where I thought like, oh, I wasn't ready for this one. But then luckily I feel very grateful, and I think my parents will be glad to hear that there have been more moments where I felt like I was ready for this. I knew this could happen. So, so I feel grateful for that. You know, and I think that has been the hard thing, is like, everybody, they're like, the constant change has been hard on everybody. And I also think that school didn't really prepare me for the idea that like this was a million different little things every day, right? Like I sort of came into this idea with the idea that like, and this is like to my colleagues who've been doing this for a long time, is like, you know, I sort of came into this with the idea like, I'll be able to write a full sermon in several hours and it will be fine. Like, and that's never the case. Like, there's just like a million things that are always happening. So that's been an interesting like shift in perspective. But I think like, you know, some of the questions that people come to you with, like for me, like explaining some things, like, and the big thing that school did prepare me to say is like, you know what, I don't know how to answer that, but let me look it up, or like, let's look it up together, which has been a lifesaver for sure.
So thank you for that. Yeah, it's one of the commonalities that I'm hearing between all of you all is that, I mean, I told you I was going to ask the second question. You kind of already answered it for me, is that the hard parts are tied to the joyful parts, the things that get us up in the morning, the things that make us continue on. And I mean, even come out of retirement or semi-retirement to keep doing some of these things. and I mean, what I'm hearing from you is both like a passion for the calling for this kind of work, both from the God as you understand it, but also like a connection to the people, whether that means speaking a really hard word to them that they need to hear, or trying to answer questions like how to get onto Zoom. It's the people that get us up, is what I'm hearing. And I completely agree. And so for our last thing, I'm just going to, I know we're slightly over. Thank you for being gracious with your time. I'm going to give each of our panelists a chance to bandstand a little bit of how to find their community, both in person and online, and give them a chance to share if there is an event or how to join a regular service, where to go to, or if you have a big event coming up. The one I do want to announce ahead of time is that Rabbi Alicia is being installed this Friday, correct? This Friday. And so I'm going to shoot it right back to you. I know what installation means to me. So where can we find you and the Shir Tikva community online? And what does installation mean? Because we're very excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So installation for me means that I'm going to be sticking around for a while. We would have done this sooner, but you know, COVID times. So this is our way of celebrating that I'm here through at least 2024. And, you know, if God willing, then I'll be here longer than that. You know, we'll see one day at a time, as they say. So installation is, it's going to be part of our regular Shabbat services, which are Friday evenings. This one is at 7:15 this Friday night. And if you'd like to come, we'd love to have you. We are also doing everything online too. So if you want to join us from the comfort of your home, we are at shirtikva.org. And I'll type it in the chat so you can see how to spell the organization. We meet every Friday evening for services. We've got adult education stuff going on. We have in 2 weeks, we have another holiday coming up, which is open to the community. It's a holiday called Purim, and it is, we have a carnival and the story of Esther. So if Esther is in your tradition, you're certainly welcome to join us for that. Just, you know, we're asking for RSVPs. But yeah, shirtikva.org is the best way to find me. And you know, installation, my mentor, like my thesis advisor, my mentor is coming up from school to install me. The Rabbi Arnie Sudelberg, who many of you may have known at one point in the community, will be there also to be a part of that. He's our Rabbi Emeritus. So it'll be a really lovely, wonderful celebration. So yeah.
All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Hoden, where can we find the Dharma Gate Center? And is there any regular meetings that you all have that people are welcome to join?
Yeah, we have regular services all through the week. So we have a Sunday service at 10 a.m. Anybody is welcome to come and join that. That's our biggest service of the week. We have meditation, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We also host a recovery program 3 days a week now. We used to have 4. We had to shut one down. We don't really have any big holidays coming up until the spring in May, when we've got, you know, we call it in the West Buddhist birthday. It's basically Buddhist Christmas. But it's like a larger, you know, event. People take precepts and stuff on that day. But that's probably the closest thing coming up. Anybody's welcome to come at any time, join the meditation. Come visit us for a service. We are obviously in Troy. You can find us at dharmagatesen.org. You'll see our address on there. It's right off of 15 Mile.
Thank you so much. Imam my apologies, my tongue is not behaving tonight. Imam Shamshad Nasir, where can we find you and the Ahmadiyya community? Is there any big events that you would like to tell us about that folks are invited to?
You can find me on the Zoom. You can find me in the mosque. You can find our community on the 1703 Auburn Road. And we are open every day, 5 times our prayers, morning, afternoon, morning, at noon, afternoon, and evening time. And anybody want to come, just give us call 909-636-8332. And more importantly, that first week of April, our holy month of fasting, Ramadan, is starting. And it is everyday service, evening time, especially starting from 7 o'clock till 10:30. You are most welcome. We will have the dinner also to be served to each and every person for 30 days. So all of you are invited every day, because from 7 to 8, we have 1 hour teachings of Islam, how we have to convey this message, how we have to behave, how we have to serve God, how to serve the community, humanity as well. So all these things are there. So our address is 1730 West Almond Road, and our website is also there, www.alislam.org, ALISLAM.org. You can find us there. You can find on Zoom anytime you want to invite us. You can find us in the mosque, in the community, and our mosque telephone number is 248-293-0072. As I said that in Ramadan, we have special event for the guest also. So I hope our people will approach to you all, and you are most welcome that special day to come. But rest of the 29 days also, you are welcome to come.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Reverend Ginger, where can we find you and the Beacon community? And is there any holidays coming up that you all are celebrating this spring?
Well, we are on Livernois, just off of Waddles and Livernois. We're the barn church, so you might be able to see us. We have a historic barn as our church, and our services on Sunday are at 10:30 in the morning, and we're in person and on Zoom, and all are welcome.
Thank you so much. And then lastly, I know, Bob, you are at large, but you are also actively preaching. So where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So I am currently preaching at First Presbyterian Church of Troy, which is on Livernois, just up a quarter of a block from Beacon. The pastor there is Dan Heaton. He's with the National Guard, and he's over in Doha on a deployment. So I started in October and will continue helping out until end of May, the church. So our services are at 10 o'clock there. You can find the church's website at firstprestroy.org. I'll put that in the chat box there. If you're interested in what I'm kind of up to, I have a blog. It's at bobcornwall.com, and you can find me there. And since I get the opportunity, and I talked about my strange journey of life, I wrote a book published. It came out in the fall called Called to Bless from Cascade Press. So go to Amazon, look me up, Robert D. Cornwall, and you can find this book, and you all should purchase it and write reviews and love it, so that others will know that it's a great book. So anyway, but I am currently at First Pres, and welcome you every Sunday morning at 10. We are in person, but you can also find us on our Facebook page live in that fashion as well.
All right.
And I'll type that all of that into the chat box.
The chat, wonderful. All right, and I realized I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. Hello, everyone. I'm Pastor Chris. I'm the pastor at Northminster Presbyterian Church. I am also the convener of TIG, and so I want to thank you all. Thank our panelists for being open and willing to share their stories. In my world, stories are sacred. So when people are willing to share stories, I feel blessed to know just a little bit more of God's creation and the stories that are abound in our diversity, in our differences, in our similarities. Thank you so much for sharing those stories with us tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right. And now I'm going to welcome everyone to our routine moment of chaos. You are invited to now come off mute and say goodbye. If you want, you can pop on camera and say goodbye. This is your moment of chaos in our goodbye.
Goodbye.
Us tonight.
Bye.
Asher Koa.
Blessings all.
Bye. Goodbye,
Thank
all.
you. Thank you.
Shalom, shalom.
Night.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Pastor
you.
Chris. Thank you, Tig, everybody. It was a pleasure.
All right.